What the is we doing?
All right, welcome back, everybody. Episode number 31. Do you have anything to drink on your end?
The water right here. Cucumber water.
All right,
Cheers for
I
that.
guess we're starting to stray away from the alcohol, so I got coffee here.
Got some
Now,
gin in it?
you can tell the
Or
people a little bit about where you're at because right now we're 12 hours apart, if I'm not
that's
mistaken. I'm in the
fast.
morning and you're in the evening.
Yeah, currently that time of this recording here, I'm in Bali, Indonesia. It's 7 p.m. here. So which means it's 7 a.m. in your time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just doing some solo backpacking. Final destination is Ecuador eventually, which will be in a couple months. And I actually today I just booked my flight to Thailand. Leaving on 2 weeks from now. So yeah, I'm from Thailand.
Nice.
I got no clue where I'm going. Yeah, that's
Hey
pretty
man,
much
that's
it.
the whole idea of backpacking.
I have met some crazy people, some interesting people as well. And I'm actually grabbing dinner with one of the friends that I made on day one, which is pretty cool, Korean. She actually got me into jiu-jitsu because she practiced martial arts. So fun times. Anyways,
Yeah, okay, cool.
I just came back from there
One of the
actually.
things there was
So
so I got some tip or some advice. One of the things that people might be into is for us to start bringing on different guests or just different people to get
mhm,
different perspectives, which is something we've always thought, but it's just a matter of like actually getting the people.
right.
So I don't know if you have anybody over there that might be interested. You can have them come on with you and we can have a discussion for the following time.
Yo, I can set that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually a great idea. We can chat more about that offline, and
Yep.
we can see how that goes. But yeah, go for it. We have some limited
All right.
time since my body's about to die.
Yeah. So today's topic of conversation is going to be imposter syndrome. Um, so the way the concept works, essentially, depending on the circumstances, sometimes what we have to do is fake it till you make it, right? Or
Mm,
you put yourself in a situation, maybe in a leadership role, where you don't necessarily feel like you are a leader. So you have to take on all the qualities of being a leader without necessarily
right,
feeling like you are one, right? So
right.
from that perspective, where do you think like imposter syndrome exists for you, if you have any, or have you seen
Hmm.
it? Is it something that's a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Where's your perspective on that?
Definitely, it comes down to perspective, in my opinion. So the actual definition of imposter syndrome is, I have it right here, since I watched a TED talk on this. The experience of feeling like a fake fool. That's kind of like the straight answer for that. And
Mhm.
I think coming from an immigrant family, just being Latino, like in the US, that's one aspect that you deal with like every day. Because even when on my engineering job, most of my colleagues they have been on the job for a couple of years, and being the youngest in the team, I had to try to prove myself that I was part of that team, like you know, valuable or an asset to the team. So I guess that's where I feel like it played the most. Like even in college, I feel like that was also true, just because yeah, I think I always try to do my best, being the best in that whatever I do. So like even in college, I was trying to focus my time and energy in most of my college like work, and try to be part of the social groups, part of the academic groups as well. And I feel like I didn't balance enough in networking with like my community, like within like Latino communities. Because like if you notice, like most of my friends, they are either from the US or like uh different backgrounds as I am. And actually, okay, boom, new idea. So here in Bali, I ran into this kind of like Uber driver, and twice and she recognized me because I told her that I was from Ecuador, and they haven't seen or met people from Ecuador. So they start asking you questions. And then it's just like, oh shit, like there's not a lot of people like me here, you know? So it's like, do I
Yeah.
belong here? Which I don't really care, but I think that's kind of like the perspective that, this idea is coming from right now.
Gotcha. So yeah, I can definitely tell you from my own personal experience, I've definitely felt that sense of imposter syndrome. Um, Again, I can usually relate it back to work, right? So becoming a fitness manager in my line of work, the idea is that you're supposed to be a leader that creates a team to be high performing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know what I'm personally capable of because before I became a fitness manager, I did a lot of production and I was pretty good at doing what I did. But the question is, can I lead other people to do the same, right? That's one. Two, my level of experience compared to people that have been working in the industry for a decade plus, 2 decades, where like, who am I to tell them what to do, right? Which at this point I've only had about like 3 years, 3 to 4 years worth of experience compared to somebody that's at 10 to 20.
Right.
And then the age, right? That's another thing, right? Like these people are 30s, 40s, 50 years old. I'm early 20s, now mid 20s. So that's definitely a situation where imposter syndrome can come into play. I can tell you that realistically, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter if you do feel like you are that type of individual to lead somebody, or you can even switch this into like dating dynamics, right? Like sometimes you have to pretend to be as confident as you are in order to maybe make an approach or to have a conversation. Again, whatever scenario you're stuck in. But
Right.
at the end of the day, the end result is going to be the same, right? Whether you feel like you are this type of person or you are pretending to be this type of person. And the thing is, when you possibly pretend because you don't have the experience or you don't have the time put in compared to somebody else, eventually you do become the individual that does feel like they're worth it, or they do feel like they do belong, right?
Right.
But that only comes with enough time and experience. So that again, it's like the chicken or the egg scenario. Which one came first? At the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as you got the action completed, regardless of your level of experience, regardless if you feel like you're at this level of competence that's required for the position, you got the job done. Right. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody's looking for. Did you get the job done? Right.
Right.
Did you lead the team to success? Did you ask the girl out? Did you do whatever project that you needed to do leading a team? Right. Sometimes things are not going to work out the way you thought they were, and that's fine. That's kind of just the nature of life, right? It's about adapting and overcoming. But the fact that you were able to adjust and pivot when the circumstances weren't good means that you are the type of individual that should be doing this type of work.
Yeah, I feel like
So,
this is always like super present on like competitive environments. So let's say a corporate role where you are competing against your peers to get some leadership position, management position, or just like go up the ladder. I think that's where I've seen it like more present. Like even if you switch the role. Oh, and also like this might be a New York thing, but it's when you get to a position where there's no people that look like you. And that's where you start kind of like getting this feeling that you don't belong there and that you want to do more than your peers just because you need to prove yourself in these environments. So I think being competitive plays a huge role when you feel it. And in my perspective, I don't really see a negative on it just because you're just pushing yourself eventually to do better and be better. And even if you switch to a different role, just the nature of yourself is gonna bring that out of you. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really
yeah,
matter like that role that you're holding. If you're a competitive person, you're gonna feel that sense of that not belonging because you're always trying to seek new opportunities, go to like to kind of like level up. That's how I see
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But
That
yeah.
should be the perspective, right? Like it's you taking the chance to be better, to level up. And again, circumstances are not going to be ideal. Maybe you don't have the experience. Maybe you don't have all the prerequisites to be in this position. But again, it's, at the end of the day, it's the end result that matters, right? So what ends up happening, that's what we kind of gauge all the effort in, right? Like whatever the end result is, that's what we value the most. So yeah, don't think, well, at least from my perspective, the imposter syndrome isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just more of a mindset, right? Like,
Yeah.
why are we doing this, right? Because sometimes, like, you can be trying to, do something malicious, right? Like you're trying to implement this idea of imposter syndrome to actually do something bad. Or in that scenario, then obviously that's not a good thing. But if you're doing it from a place of like, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to do more, I want to create better outcomes, then utilizing the imposter syndrome and, inhabiting those traits and those characteristics of individuals that are successful, even though you don't necessarily feel like you are, is going to be a very beneficial thing, because eventually those will become who you are, right?
Right.
We as individuals, and look into the research of psychology and psychologists, personalities aren't stagnant, right? It's not that you are born one type of person and that's the only type of person you can be for the rest of your life. If for a long time you were an individual that didn't really do much, right? Maybe you weren't ambitious, you weren't necessarily a go-getter or somebody that's proactive in life. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't be, right? You can make that switch. It might not happen all at once, granted, but if you decide that, hey, I want to turn things around, I want to make something of myself, I want to make an impact on the world, utilizing something like an imposter syndrome, whoever you're looking for, whoever you're looking up to, then that becomes something that you want to do and inhabit, those characteristics and traits from those individuals that you feel like are worth your time and attention and the respect. So yeah, definitely think it's something that is important if you're somebody who's looking to build and grow. Again, from my perspective, if you're somebody that's really young, that's probably a feeling that you're going to fall into often, simply because you don't have the experience, you don't have the time compared to other individuals, right? In the corporate world, if you go into environments where you don't really see a lot of people that look like you or come from the same background as you, you might feel like you're out of place. Again, that's normal, because not everybody has had the opportunities that you have had, or others haven't tried as much as you have, right? So the reason why you're in this position now is because you put in a lot of effort, and sometimes people from your community don't do the same, or they don't get the same chances. Regardless.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So kind of like going from there, right? Something that you mentioned about like being out of the place in an environment. I feel like that's very important because, okay, so boom, it depends. So let's say you get to a level where maybe like within your family or like within your culture, they haven't been there, right? And time to time, I seen people getting discouraged from like keep going up. They decide to like just not keep pushing forward, right? Because they feel out of place. So I think being there and having a perspective that you're doing things that other people has not done it in the past should be looked in a positive way, saying that you're paving the path for other people and inspiring other people for future generations to like do things that you have done. And I have seen me doing this within my family since like, like as a first generation in New York, like graduating from college, like now just backpacking, like just out of nowhere, to be honest. And doing these things, like even my family in Ecuador, they worry about me because they're like, where are you? And like, how are you, able to accomplish this when it's very rare to see that from like within that specific environment, from that specific culture. So I think it depends on the perspective that you see it. So like you can get to the place you get this the imposter syndrome, and now it's on your perspective to either get discouraged or be actually encouraged to do more and be more and just keep pushing forward and just paving the path to like inspire next generations. And now the next generation comes and they look at you for inspiration. Okay, he did it. Why can I not go further? You know what I mean? So it's always kind of like
Right.
leveling up and just like keep pushing to different levels. So I guess that's what I see it like, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming here to like the last 5 minutes or so, a little bit less. The idea here is that you always want to be pushing the boundary, right? Because our
Mhm.
thing is like we want to create freedom in terms of choice, right? We want to have the ability to do whatever it is we want in life. And if for that to happen, you need to again push the boundaries, level up, go to the next level. And again, that's probably going to be very uncomfortable if you don't have anybody to like measure yourself against or compare yourself to in relation to like, I've seen somebody else do it, so now I can do it. If you're going to be
Mhm.
the first one to pave that path, then that's going to be a tall order because, again, like when we put ourselves in situations where we're not used to it or like it's very, very uncomfortable, we either have a
Right.
tendency of falling back and not growing, or if you're an individual that can push through and persevere and be brave, then you will create better outcomes for yourself because you push through the resistance or whatever the situation is.
That's correct.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think there's nowhere else where we can take this. I think let's see. Okay, so we know how it feels because like we experienced that in our life, right? Like we have been in that position. And how do you kind of like deal with it so you don't get discouraged? I think you haven't really explained that a little bit more.
Okay. So yeah,
Expand it a little bit.
for me, I want to create better outcomes, right? So I need
Mhm.
to put myself in a position where I have choices, which is basically what I was mentioning.
Mhm.
Um, Becoming a fitness manager wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to do, but I felt like I needed to do. Um, so I can tell you that the work that I do isn't necessarily stable. So you need to create, if you want better choices and outcomes, you need to have some stability in your life in relation to income, right? Because then you'll have
Mhm.
the ability to generate more because you have a foundation to build upon. So that's one aspect to it. Secondly, going back to the fact that the work that we do as trainers isn't easy, right? Because we're filling
Mhm.
so many different positions. Um, you're not only the person that creates the product, you sell the product, you fulfill the product, and if somebody wants to terminate the personal training, uh, you're the one who has to do that as well. So, like, you're fulfilling all the life cycle of any given product in relation to training because you are the product, right?
Mhm.
And people either stay with you or they leave you because of who you are, which says a lot, right? Because if a lot of people are leaving you, that means people can get discouraged and feel like, hey, this guy really isn't worth my time, and then you feel like you genuinely aren't worth people's time. Anyway, so that, again, I decided to become a manager simply because I wanted to create stability in relation to the things that I do, which is to work with people and build people up, right? That's always the mission of us as trainers, is to help people be better in relation to health and fitness. Does that kind of answer the question?
Sort of. I was going a little bit. I was hoping for a different answer, but I think you went a little bit more in detail to like your role specifically. Uh, I guess for me, it was more about like taking the first step and just going with the risk. And
Right.
I think that's kind of like how you deal with it. It's like having a strong mind to tolerate risk. You know, you don't want to fall in.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think I got a better answer for you.
Okay,
So,
go for it.
um, I have this thing, I have this quote in my calendar. It pops up every month, once a month.
Okay.
Um, so the hardest day to this month should be your easiest next month, right?
Mm, that's a good
So
one.
meaning
Yeah.
for me, if I'm not putting myself in situations where I am pushing boundaries to become better, to create better outcomes, to put myself in a position where I have the choice and the freedom to do what I want, then I'm failing, right? And
Right.
that's not a limitation that I'm putting on myself. It's something to motivate me to be more, right? Because at the end of the day, if we get complacent with what we do, nothing happens, right? Like we get stuck in the same position. And that's where, again, going back to people from Ecuador, where you're from, they're like, how is this guy doing all of these things? Like, I'm so used to everybody just being in the same hometown for their whole life, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
If you're not pushing those boundaries, you will never escape where you are. And that's the idea behind like that quote that I set out for myself. And I did this like, I think when I was 18, I forget what exactly inspired me to put that in the Google Calendar, but every month I have that reminder for myself, like, hey, you should be pushing the boundaries because you want to, again, create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling, right? If I am waking up every morning and I feel bored and I don't like what I'm doing, if I don't feel like I'm fulfilling any kind of purpose or mission, things start becoming very boring and depressing. And I've been in situations where like I'm bored and depressed because I'm not necessarily doing anything productive, right? And it doesn't have to be like, you know, a grand vision or a grand plan. It just has to be something that's pushing you to the next level to, again, create better situations for either yourself or for other people, right?
Right.
And that's the perspective that I take. Like, go ahead.
I got a better one, like kind of like going hand to hand with what you mentioned there. Being comfortable in the uncomfortable, because for sure when you are in an environment where you're feeling uncomfortable because you're getting this imposter syndrome, you actually need to be calm and just be comfortable there. Like be comfortable in the uncomfortable. I think that's how I will kind of like put it together, and not to just summarize and wrap it up. I think you know, it's always going to be uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable somewhere, it means that you're not getting, doing your best, being out there.
You're not pushing the boundaries and
There
you're
you go.
not putting yourself in better situations, right? Like that's the idea. When it's the first time, it's always going to be uncomfortable. But when you do it repeatedly, then it just becomes the norm.
There you go. There you have it. With that, we can wrap it up. We'll see you next episode, whenever that is.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers, friend. Boom. Water.
Salud. Wow.
This is a conversation between friends.
None of what is said here should be taken as legal advice.
We are not experts in any way.
Take what resonates and leave the rest.